So that's it. I'm going to have more coffee now.
Excellent idea. Well, let me ask, for both of you, so you're writing at a wide range of topics, but instead of me trying to tell you, why don't you explain to me, the focus seems to be that you are thinking critically as a Christian, and that's sort of the core of everything. Because you guys don't stick to a topic. You're not just politics or just church or just culture. You're all over the board. But what seems to be the linking, and correct me or define more better here, in better English than that, I hope.
More better
you're
English.
saying that as a thinking Christian who is, instead of just reacting, I'm going to put out my perspective based on having thought about this. Am I kind of hitting the nail on the head for the core of both your blog, podcast kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that what we finally settled on, at least for Dad's blog, was, instead of trying to limit it to a specific topic, let's just make this who he is as a person. What sort of stuff is he interested in? We're not probably going to write about cars, or a lot of sports or things like that. I mean, we might as a metaphor or use it for an analogy for a specific post, but we're not going to be like critiquing who traded who for what team this year, because
not going to be a lot of do-it-yourself projects on our blog.
Yeah. There might be some on mine because my husband and I do some home improvement, but yeah, with Dad, he's just he's not into sports. He's not into what's something else, like tools and stuff, and so, we're not probably
really anything that normal men are interested in is probably not going to show up on my podcast.
I think we've just nailed down why I think I relate to you so well.
Yeah, basically anything that would be of interest to the majority of people. Yeah, I probably won't cover that on my podcast. It's
apparently you are
very
with
niche.
Me on that fraction of a percent of America that doesn't care about sports. It's so nice to just be reminded that there are other men other than me who don't care about football.
Yeah. There's at least one.
The internet.
Although
it's football season, I'm like,
Right. We do the annual Super Bowl party at my house, and Dad live tweets that. But the funniest part about it, what I love the most about the annual Super Bowl party and Dad live tweeting the Super Bowl, is how little he knows about football. It's literally the only football game he watches all year, and it cracks us up.
Any excuse to have
to see his perspective. Yeah.
My son-in-law has to sit next to me and explain what they're doing as far as when the ref blows a whistle and what the calls are. And I'm like, because I have to level some sort of outrage at the call, but I don't understand the call. So Luke will tell me what it is, and then I can tweet about it. So.
Talking about sports is real easy. You just got to remember phrases like, can you believe some of the calls they got? I cannot believe some of those calls. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Just as long as you stay in that vein. I've had whole conversations with people, and that's all I said, and they were like, oh, yeah. I'm like, I don't even know what game we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you talk about things that are interesting to you, and how do you ever pick topics like in advance, like say, well, we're going to go over these, or is it just, well, I'm hitting record, what are we talking about, or we're already talking about it, like, how do you, for both the blog and the podcast, how is it you pick a topic?
We have a lot of phone conversations that aren't recorded. We actually have talked about trying to find a recording, something that works for the phone so that we can just hit record when we need to when we're already having a phone conversation. And so a lot of times we'll say, hey, we should talk about this on the podcast. But obviously we can't duplicate that exact conversation even after we've said this is a topic that we'd like to talk about sometime. A lot of times we'll say we need a podcast and then we don't. Other times we say, hey, let's podcast about this, and we will push record, and then we will talk about nothing that we had planned to talk about. So it's all very, very organic. It's very whatever kind of happens in the moment. And a lot of times what's kind of cool is we'll say we should talk about something like this, and then we'll have 2 or 3 more conversations, or something will happen in the news, or, something will crop up that also fits very well into that conversation, and we won't even necessarily have to talk about it, in advance or on the phone. It's just, hey, did you see that? Did you see this that just happened this week in the news? And that will become part of the next episode too, just because those are the links that we would have already, made if we were having a conversation without the recorder. So that's kind of how it works, I think.
Yeah, the goal was that we just wanted to record the conversations that we have, because it occurred to me that we have conversations. We're not the only people in the world that do this, but there are becoming fewer and fewer people who are able to have conversations where there's disagreement or where there's uncertainty about stuff. Conversations have become me shouting what I absolutely am certain about and you shouting what you're absolutely certain about, right, and neither one of us really listening to each other. Mm-hmm. And so we don't really do that in this family. We have all the way across the board, from the time I was a kid growing up, my sister and brother and my mom and dad in our family, we would discuss stuff. And if we were wrong about stuff, then one of the older people would usually come along and say, you're messed up. Or they would say, think about what you just said. I mean, do you really, what do you mean by that? And they would ask for clarification. And a lot of times just asking somebody to clarify what they mean by a statement causes them to think, if they're willing, it causes them to think and go, oh yeah, I guess that was kind of dumb. And so that's the way we talk in this family. And it occurred to me, largely as a result of Twitter and Facebook interactions, it's like, oh my gosh, people are not listening to each other. People are not really interested. People could write these responses in advance. I mean, it doesn't matter what the person says, the response is the same. And so mostly just as an attempt to say to whatever people are willing to listen to our podcast, it's like there are people who will have conversations, not necessarily knowing where the conversation is going to go, not necessarily having an agenda, not necessarily trying to convert you to our way of thinking. It's just, this is what I believe to be the truth. This is why I believe it's the truth. What do you think? Does that make sense to you? And if it doesn't make sense to you, then explain why. And somewhere along the line, hopefully it'll be entertaining. And that's why we do it. I mean, we don't have a vast listenership. We've got this itty bitty little group. Actually, one listener. His name's Carl. That's it. And if you don't get what we're doing or don't appreciate what we're doing, that's fine. There's lots of podcasts out there.